Amadeo, and I call this meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Amadeo,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCarthy,
Here.
Commissioner Herr,
Here.
Commissioner Rana already said he's not going to be here. Commissioner St. John, Commissioner Walton,
Here.
and Commissioner Woodson.
Here.
Richard St. John is in the attendees, just so you know.
Oh. All right, well, hold on. Let's have him be acknowledged. There's like a little bit of a delay when I promote somebody. I don't know why it promote to panelists.
And he has raised his hand.
Yes, he has. Hello, Richard, all right, well, he's here, Chair Amadeo.
Okay. All right. And it may be that he has his video turned off. So Commissioner St. John, if you can turn on your video and lower your hand. Thank you for lowering your hand, and we'll see if you can get your video going. Okay, so we are going to move on to the moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Woodson, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll stand up too. So, do we have the flag or do we not?
We don't. You've got it kind of pictured in your head.
I can picture it. Brian, I thought that was all on you. You and your
I have
flag.
a flag. I have a flag.
Oh, do you have a flag?
I can find it. Give me, I'm sorry, I should have had that ready. 1 second. One second.
Okay. It's because you're a Cub Scout. You're a Cub Master.
Yep, that's right. I'm the Cub Master.
You're-
Commissioner Woodson and I ran into each other at a Cub Scout meeting 2 weeks ago. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, now we have a flag.
There, now I have a flag. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Ready?
Yes.
Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We will move on to special announcements and communications from the floor. And we have a couple of attendees. Mike Owen, you have the floor, sir. And Guido, can you, there's Michael. Michael, do you have your mic on?
I think I'm good.
Okay, very good. Go ahead.
Okay, so if this works, the director will be showing a 2-minute, 46-second drone video that I've previously shown the council. And great. And this is from the 2nd Avenue. And if the director could stop it at the 8-second mark.
Actually, Nick, pull it up, Mike, so you can.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
So
me.
stop it right here if you could.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is, I just observed this recently. Okay, what you're looking at is the linear park that's going to stretch from 2nd Avenue all the way to 1st. That's in the 70-foot middle zone. On each side of the linear park is a 26-foot side street, and each side of those side streets are a 10-foot sidewalk that's going to stretch east to west. The 4 people that went on the June tour, led by Don Hoffer, Shea Holmes, you walked along the north-south linear park. And this is like where it intersects. Basically, this is the 6th Street entrance that goes to the other side. This section was approved by the Planning Commission January 2021 for clear cutting and the tree permit. And the basic reason was the same given previously, which was simply proximity of trees to construction activities required that they all be removed. On the right side of the picture is the edge of the Dune City Park, whose original plans 3 or 4 years ago called for removal of all those trees to provide the major access to the park off of Second Avenue.
Mr. Owen, can you hold off a moment and can you maybe stop the clock for him? Isn't the trees in the park in our agenda tonight?
Not these.
Not those. Okay, thank you, Mike.
Okay, so the initial plan 3 to 4 years ago, they did not know that the Dunes was going to be doing this linear park with 2 side streets. So I'm just trying to give you a perspective of like how everything is combined. Okay, if we can continue, thank you. We're going up the linear park. So, okay, great. And then we're coming up to the edge of this area to the right is what was approved by the Planning Commission in May 14, 2020 for also clear cutting. You're looking straight at First Avenue. The row of trees to the right were all approved 2 years ago for removal, clear cutting. Same reason, proximity to construction activities require that they all be removed. The council put a hold on removing those trees after the developer shot himself in the foot and removed 7 trees illegally without a permit, which caused a lot of backlash and really a lot closer examination of these trees by the developer, who found out that they could actually save 8 of these trees that previously said couldn't be removed. You couldn't be saved. 6th Avenue was the stretch where the 7 trees were removed illegally. So the next shot, you're looking at the rest of 3rd phase, which was set up to be completely clear cut, just as the 2 previous tree removal permits for clear cutting in 2020 and 2021. This would have happened unless the developer made this big mistake and removed these trees, which caused all the public backlash and looking more closely at what could be saved. These trees along First Avenue, a lot of those can now be saved. The car that you see coming up is crossing 5th Avenue and is proceeding to 3rd Avenue, which is the county property line. It's crossing 3rd Avenue about right now, heading to 2nd Avenue at there. And then the next item is like DeVarty First Street. This is 2nd and 3rd Street. The future park, called South Park, is 5 barracks long, 3 barracks wide, and it's going to be intersected completely by Inner Garrison Road, which like takes away about 30% of the park. And nobody can figure out like how that happened or what was the reason for it to happen. This next shot, this is the community opportunity phase. All these buildings are going to be removed, but there's no plans for what's going to go in there. And so the trees at the end towards the county can probably be saved, according to Don Hoffer, because grading doesn't impact it so much. So I hope that this overview sort of helped a little bit put in perspective what the 4 people or the 5 commissioners who have gone on the walking tour like saw at the ground level. There's 2 commissioners that haven't been able to go on this walking tour. So I will extend an invite if you're interested to try to do the same thing I did for the mayor, the vice mayor, and Commissioner McCarthy, which is sort of like give you the same information everybody else on the Planning Commission has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Okay, let's see. Wait, no, doesn't have his hand up. So if there are no other comments from the public, we will move on to the consent agenda. Oh, excuse me. First, special announcements of public interest from commissioners. So is there any commissioner that, let's see. Yes, Vice Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair Amadeo. Super briefly, I did attend and maybe this is better held for the end of the meeting, but I did attend the League of Cities planning meeting, their monthly meeting. They did talk about a variety of legislative issues. 2 things kind of stuck out. One was the continuous talk about commercial property being rezoned to residential by right. And I think that's something we all should be aware of is probably a likelihood of happening in the future. So that's still being worked. And then the second one was talking about the 6-cycle housing element. And there was just some discussion about making sure that municipalities get that certified in time, because there's a difference between allowing 1 year versus 3 years to rezone appropriate properties. So I just kind of wanted to share that, and maybe in the form of a question at the end of the meeting, we can ask staff if we're on track for that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we can move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a collection of items that are thought not to require discussion, but if you would like to pull anything, today it's just minutes from meetings, but if you need to pull any one of those for discussion, now's the time to do it. Otherwise, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Okay, and I'm sorry, was that you, Brian?
It was.
Vice Chair? Okay. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so, I believe that Audra seconded first. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we have a motion by Vice Chair McCarthy and a second by Commissioner Walton. And so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So now we are going to move on to 2 public hearings. The first one is the Planning Commission of the City of Marina recommends City Council adoption of amendments to Title 17 of the Marina Municipal Code, adding section 17.45 and 17.49 for reasonable accommodation for persons with disabilities and low barrier navigation centers respectively. So do we have a staff report?
We do. And before she starts, we just wanted to welcome Allison Hunter. She's our new senior planner. We stole her away from Pacific Grove.
Oh,
We're really
fair
happy to have
loss.
her. And I did do a little bit of a reorg of the department. We do have quite a few advanced planning, housing related things. So I've asked her to focus more on advanced planning, general plan, Cypress Knolls. And this is part of a package of things we can do so we stay on the nice list for HCD in terms of housing related policies. So without further ado, just wanted to introduce Allison to the group. So
Thank you. Okay, Allison.
All right, thank you for the introduction, Guido. As you've all heard, I'm Allison Hunter, Senior Planner. I'm really excited to be here with the City of Marina and my first Planning Commission meeting. I do have a slideshow, so I will go ahead and try to share my screen and see if we can make this work reasonably. Okay, can you see my?
Can
Yes.
you put it on the full, because it's very small.
Let's
Can
see.
Can you fill the screen?
I'm on my screen. It looks like it's full screen, but let me try again here. This is technology is not my area of expertise. Let's see.
Guido, can you explain to her how to put it into the full screen?
Commissioner Amadeo, full screen to me. Yeah, that looks full screen to
yeah,
me.
that looks fine to
Okay.
me. Yeah, you're good.
Me,
Okay.
it's about 1.5 by 3 inches.
Okay.
I don't know what the problem is.
I'm not sure what the problem may be in your gallery setting, but
I will
not
try changing
sure.
that.
Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. As we mentioned, these are 2 amendments to the zoning code that are standard items that should either already be in our zoning code or are relatively new state legislation that we want to add just because it will help us to be more compliant with state law. Now I'm gonna have trouble advancing. This is unfortunate. Let's see.
I think you can hit enter, Allison, right?
I'm trying enter, that's not working, and I'm doing arrows.
Okay.
Hmm,
Is this in PowerPoint or is this a PDF?
it's a PowerPoint.
I
I'm
can
gonna,
Yeah.
I can share it.
Yeah.
thanks, Nick.
This was part of my plan all along, so.
You're gonna steal my thunder.
No, you have to talk. I'm just gonna share my screen.
Okay. All right, perfect. Okay, so yeah, we already talked a little bit about why we're doing this now. As Guido mentioned, we're trying to take some actions to be sure that we're keeping in compliance as much as we possibly can with state housing law. And that means updating our municipal code periodically. So the reasonable accommodation for persons with disabilities is actually something that's been around for quite some time. California Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988. And this, as I'll get into a little bit later, this is actually one of the implementation measures from our last cycle housing element. And then the Low Barrier Navigation Center is recent state law. I believe it is Assembly Bill 101, and it provides for by right development of these low barrier navigation centers in certain zones, not all zones, but it is intended to help with the immediate housing crisis that the state is facing. So like we've now said a couple of times, the adoption of these two amendments will help the city's current zoning code and housing element meet state compliance requirements. Next slide, please. Nick?
Did it not go for you guys?
It did not go for me.
I can see Allison. He's showing what are the proposed amendments. Says
Oh, what the heck?
says reasonable accommodation for persons. with
Okay.
disabilities.
There we go. I think I'm on a little delay. Okay, so this is a broad statute that simply acknowledges citizens' right to reasonable accommodation. So like, just as it sounds, this allows an individual to request modification or exception to rules, standards, and practices for the development, siting, and use of housing or housing-related facilities that would eliminate regulatory barriers and provide a person with disability equal opportunity for housing of their choice. So typically this has to do with fairly minor improvements to buildings that are frequently temporary in nature and would potentially require some minor exceptions to things like setbacks or other development standards. We could go to the next slide.
Yeah, we can see it. We can see it.
Okay, I'm definitely on a delay. I'm still on that last one. This is very strange. Yeah, I'm still seeing number one.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow.
This is strange. Nick, is there a way that you can share the like reduced kind of a minimized screen so it's not taking up the whole my whole screen?
Can you see it now? Is that better?
It's the same. I'm kind of frozen on this slide number 3.
Okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and change my share. Can you see now?
Nope. It's still number 3. I didn't print out my PowerPoint, which is kind of a bummer. But if you go, so you're all looking at number 2, the low barrier navigation.
We're on slide 4.
Or
Okay.
it's showing the types of accommodations.
Oh, okay. So as you can see, this is the slide with a couple of photos on it.
Yep.
Wheelchair ramps are by far the most common improvements for reasonable accommodation. It can include other items, but it's important to note that if an individual requires a ramp and they, for whatever reason, just the way that the existing improvements are situated right now, if it needs to take up a parking space, you cannot make them, replace that parking space elsewhere. So it's really intended to just allow people with disabilities the same access that anybody else has. If you can go on to the next slide.
Slide 5 now.
Okay, what's on this slide? Sorry,
Low-barrier-
everyone, I'm just
low-barrier.
winging it now, so.
Yeah, the low barrier navigation centers.
Okay, so the low barrier navigation centers are, like I said earlier, a new legislation passed by the state in 2019. These are specific assistance facilities. They're they're like a combination of a supportive housing and homeless shelter, but they are only allowed in city of Marina. They would only be allowed in 3 zoning districts. I believe,
To CR, C1, and C2.
yep, those are the 3 zoning districts they would be allowed in, and they're allowed in those districts because the statute requires them to be not located in residential zones, but in zones that allow mixed use and residential uses. That's why they're only allowed in these commercial zones, because specifically in Marina, those are the zoning districts that allow mixed uses and multifamily as part of a mixed use. And I believe the intent of the legislation is, these are typically areas that are closer to services. They're already in a kind of mixed use commercial, perhaps a downtown type of area where services can be provided to those seeking them. And this is the kind of situation where, like many of the recent legislative actions from the state are by right, they would be undertaken by a nonprofit. Typically, it's not the city, creating this navigation center. It would be a nonprofit or another entity who would be developing and managing and operating this facility. How about the next slide?
Just describes the low navigation center in more detail.
Okay. Let me see. Now I'm just kind of, I did want to mention that this ordinance is the draft ordinance that I've provided tonight is very brief, and it is based on a draft ordinance that is provided to jurisdictions by HCD. So I did not include any very specific Marina bells and whistles in this. It's very straightforward, just taken right from the HCD sample, other than, numbering it so that it fits within our code and specifying what zoning districts it would be allowed in. And then I did include in this packet a couple of fact sheets as attachments to kind of help with this low barrier navigation center. The first fact sheet in your packet is specifically goes into more detail about how these are operated and the requirements for operating and managing these types of facilities. That is a handout prepared by HCD. And then your second attachment is a handout describing the housing first methodology. And so as we get kicked off on our housing element process. We're going to be talking more and more about this housing first idea. It's not really new, but it is a new concept of people need to be housed securely before you can start undertaking all of the other supportive services and things that people think of. So we'll get more into that as we move along. But just to wrap up my presentation, the 2 draft ordinances that have been prepared are included as exhibits to the Planning Commission resolution. So if your commission so desires, and you agree to recommend approval to the city council of these ordinances, all you would need to do is adopt this resolution, and then we will be moving that forward. I think that's it for my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any, and thank you very much.
And
Okay.
the Chair Amadeo, I did email Allison off of her Gmail account the presentation. So if Allison, if you have that, then if they have questions, then we can help facilitate. If they have questions about the slides, that you at least have them. So
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, now is the time for questions. If you have any questions, commissioners, now would be the time to raise your hand, your virtual hand. And I am not seeing any commissioners. I do have oh, wait a minute. Commissioner St. John.
Yes, I have a question. If you could elaborate just a little bit on the application of cannabis to the and adult. I don't know if it was the words were adult entertainment or adult businesses. How does that fit in with this motion?
I don't believe adult businesses are part of this ordinance amendment at this point.
Allison, on one of your slides, you had referenced some type of cannabis thing.
And
Oh,
business
okay.
as well.
Sure, that's the section of the code. Yeah, let me see. I'm looking at the slides on my phone. Thank you for sending those, Guido. The title that we propose for this to be added to is regulations for specific land uses. So those, on the slide, it says individual uses like cannabis, adult businesses, massage therapists, and surface mining. Those happen to be uses that are already referenced in the municipal code under this Title 17, Article 5, regulations for specific land uses. So I propose to put it in that same article simply because it is a specific land use and it is allowed in several zoning districts. So it would be handled similarly as those other land uses, but it's totally separate. It's not related per se in operation or any other way to those other uses.
Kind of a legacy code that's already in there.
Right. Yeah, when I was determining where it would fit in our code, because it is a brand new section, I felt like that was appropriate place for it. Your commission could discuss other places, but that seemed reasonable to me.
And for the benefit of the commission, I do have up the code. The code here is rather, I don't want to say unique, but there are kind of, so actually let's back up. So there's the entire, we have some newer commissioners. So the entire municipal code is 20 some odd titles. That's what they call it. Title 16 is for subdivisions. Title 17 is the zoning code. That's what the city planners primarily reference. And then within the zoning code, there's 5 articles. And then Article 2 is for each of the specific zoning districts. Article 3 is overlays. And then what Allison was referencing was Article 5, which is kind of regulations for specific land uses. So that's what Allison was referring to in terms of where she was proposing to stick this new ordinance. So hopefully that provides some context. So.
Thank you. Commissioner St. John, do you have any other questions?
No, I'm clear now. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair Amadeo. My first question is, do we have objective design standards for these low barrier navigation centers?
We do not at this point.
So if somebody came to the city after we passed this and wanted to build something, a purple polka dot building, and they said, well, by right, we can do this because there's no objective design standards, they could do that? Is that, I mean, somewhat fair to say? I know the examples may be a little bit extreme, but
Yes, if it meets the requirements of state law, then it would be allowed by right in those zoning districts with a
Okay.
building permit, of course.
And in terms of zoning, I missed it when I was doing my homework before the meeting, but so you're saying we cannot add additional zones into what you've already suggested. So for example, our existing kind of homeless shelters, many of them are in a residential zone because we believed historically that they fit well there, but we couldn't add that as part of this, even if we wanted to. It has to have a commercial act.
I believe that this is actually the minimum. What's proposed here in this sample ordinance is the minimum. I do not believe that a city or municipality would be limited only to those types of zoning districts.
Okay.
I think that's what the state sort of put forward as perhaps the easiest fit for many places.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is, some people might argue that our most vulnerable citizens or our most low-income citizens are living in these zones of high density mixed use. And it seems that we might be further impacting them by limiting the low barrier navigation centers to only those zones. And I'm curious, have you heard any discussion at the state level of that argument? Is that something you've heard before? Or?
I have not.
I have not either.
Okay. And my last question is for Planning Commission review of these low barrier navigation centers. I'm reading the code and it talks about any design review or public oversight. The development may be conducted by the local government's planning commission or any equivalent board, blah, 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 blah. But that it has to be, objective and follow some kind of streamlined process. So my question is, in Marina, what might that look like? Do you think that planning commission oversight will be part of this, or do you think it'll be strictly ministerial?
I believe it's intended to be ministerial.
Okay. Excellent presentation. I really appreciate it. Those are my questions for now. Thank you, Chair Amadeo.
Thank you, Vice Chair McCarthy. We have a lot of nonprofits who provide housing for people in need of wraparound services due to homelessness. And they are primarily on the former Fort Ord. So they don't fit that. They don't fit the ordinance that would help us comply with the state. And nonprofits got first grab, so to speak, at housing on the former Fort Ord, which is why we have so many nonprofits providing housing and wraparound services in Abrams and in Preston Park. And of course, at the Veterans Transition Center, which includes some housing in the area that had been duplexes on the former Fort Ord. I think it was called Patton Park. So my question is, because that was a requirement through Fort Ord reuse, and more housing will be built there. There's a major apartment complex that's going to be built at the VTC to provide those services. How does this impact the city of Marina in terms of developing new projects, or in how we look at projects on the former Fort Ord and how those are developed? Is it going to be done ministerially, or is it going to come to the Planning Commission? I'm kind of confused because I think we are a unique community in how we were regulated by FORA in the development of housing for our homeless population.
Yeah, I believe that because this is a very, very distinctive use type, and it would be a very particular use type nonprofit agency that would be providing these services. I think it's really intended to be different than the other kind of more standard shelter situations where it's providing temporary shelter, but it's really very case management heavy and focused more on finding permanent housing and other services and jobs, as noted here in the draft ordinance.
Certainly that's what the VTC does.
Right,
And,
similar to that service.
okay, so I just wondered how what we're currently doing on the former Fort Ord with properties working with nonprofits. Lexington Court is an example that was a few years ago developed as wraparound services, transitional housing, specifically for, they went on a waiting list, but it was for people who were homeless and in need of job training, psychological help, you know, all of the wraparound services that would be included. So does what we've already done, does that count towards this? Or no, this is something totally different? I'm trying to understand.
Sure, I think this is totally different. It's very new. I don't think it, you know, acts as any kind of barrier to what we already have operating. And we could have additional, more of that other style happening in other places, could be developed in Marina aside from this ordinance. You know, there could be new developments following that existing model, not utilizing this low barrier navigation center model. But according to state law, we need to have this in place so that if one of these operators did want to come in, we could accommodate them.
Okay, that makes it clearer to me. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And yeah, just to further kind of support what Allison's saying. So, you know, there's been a lot of changes to housing laws, you know, so there's the transitional housing policies that I helped write for a couple other cities. There's the single room occupancy ordinance. I wrote that one. There is supportive housing policies. Then about 5 or 6 years ago, there was emergency shelter, an ordinance where you had to have a shelter at least in one zoning district in every city in the whole state. So this is just another way for the state to kind of mandate that the cities provide housing in for a lot of different segments of the population, and then a lot of reducing barriers to getting that done. Years ago, cities didn't want to put shelters in different zones, so then none of them were being used. So then the state said, okay, fine, cities, if you're not going to do that, then we're going to mandate you put a shelter in at least one zoning district in your city. So this is just another kind of state, you have to do this. This is another segment of the housing population to serve. And this is just another model to help, you know, skin the cat in several different ways. So that's kind of the proverbial term. So.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we're going to open, this is a public hearing, so we're going to open it up to the public. And if any member of the public would like to speak to this issue, would you please raise your virtual hand to be recognized. We only have 3 people attending, and none of them have raised their hands. So I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners for discussion or entertainment of a motion. Chair McCarthy.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Amadeo. I fully support the recommended motion, and I think it was an excellent presentation by Allison, minus the technical difficulties.
Thank you.
I do have some concerns about, and I'm, I don't know that they raised to the level of making any amendments to a recommended motion, but that we're only focusing on the kind of more dense areas where I believe Marina residents are already disproportionately burdened by other things. And now we're trying, to burden them, frankly, with more. And I know that's an unpopular word to use, but that's the word that I'm choosing. So that's one concern. And then the other concern, again, not something that I'm willing to stray from the recommended motion on, but I'd really, and I've said this before, I'd like to have this discussion about how we handle ministerial review. And I know it is the city's perspective that, it's probably easier done at a staff level. The issue I have with that is not that I disagree with that. It's that as a commissioner, I only know what I know. And if I don't see these things, then it really inhibits my ability to make decisions in the future based off of what the city is doing, right? If I'm not seeing what this ministerial process looks like, then I'm not as educated as I'd like to be in terms of doing things like voting on objective guidelines and design standards. So I would like to see the city consider some way, and I don't know if it's a full-blown kind of review or if it's some hybrid of that, but of getting the Planning Commission learned or educated on what some of these ministerial item approvals look like. So those are my comments. And I'd like to hear from other commissioners, and I'd be ready to make a motion if no one else is.
Does anyone else have any comments? I'm not seeing any. I would like to respond because I do think it's important to understand what happens behind the scenes when the commission doesn't actually see it. And perhaps when we have something like this that's done ministerially, it doesn't have to happen every time. But when something happens ministerially, just to give a report to the commission on what that process was, how we got to where we are, as opposed to having to bring something forward and have us do what should be done ministerially anyway. But I understand the concern when you're trying to learn how things work in the planning of your community. It is important to understand what staff does that we don't see as compared to what comes before us. And I would like to hear from staff to know if Vice Chair McCarthy's concerns could be addressed in an after the fact review of occasionally of ministerial decisions.
Absolutely. That issue comes up in a lot of different places I've worked. Some cities post on their website all the planning, ADUs and other ministerial stuff and how many they've done and by month. We can certainly walk the commission through, how an ADU is done at the building permit stage or even this. Frankly, we're probably not going to get a lot of these, but we're just trying to be as compliant with state law as possible. We stay on the nice list for HCD. So if this comes up, absolutely, we can certainly, brief the commission, and that's totally fine. There's always a natural tension between, customers want things yesterday, commissions and councils want oversight, and where's that balance? And
Right.
The balance really is how the zoning code is written, the culture and traditions of the city. But absolutely, we can have a monthly report, or we can put it on the agenda however the commission wants. That's totally fine.
So I'm going to go back to Vice Chair McCarthy. And if you want to elaborate on what I suggested to make it more in compliance with what you were hoping to see, that now would be the time.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Chair. Again, I think it's not something that has to be decided as part of this motion, but I appreciate what staff's response was, and it sounds like there's a number of different options. And maybe if I can recommend, maybe if HCD is kind of the concern, maybe we reach out directly to them and say, hey, our planning commission has expressed an interest in I don't know what the right word is, reviewing or being aware of some of these things. How do you recommend municipalities deal with that kind of concern? And so I think we have some time to figure it out. I wanted to express my concern kind of for the record.
If I could, that's a really great point, Vice Chair McCarthy. And I think that discussion will definitely come up when your planning commission is reviewing the objective design standards, as well as kicking off our housing element process.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Both of those activities will warrant more discussion on that.
Great. Thank you very much. Do we have any other discussion before we have a motion? Seeing none, so I will entertain a motion at this time.
I'm willing to make a motion, Chair. I move to adopt a resolution attached recommending the City Council adopt ordinances amending Title 17 of the Marina Municipal Code, adding section 17.45 and 17.49, addressing reasonable accommodations for persons with disabilities and low barrier navigation centers, and finding that the action is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 15060C2 and 15061B3 of the CEQA guidelines.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
I second. it.
Second,
All right, we have a second from Commissioner St. John. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Commissioner Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarthy,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodson.
Yes.
Sounds good. Motion approved.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 7B. That is our second public hearing. Recommendation to open a public hearing and take any testimony from the public, and consider adopting a resolution recommending that the Community Development Director approve the removal of an additional 5 trees, including 2 potential, at the proposed city park on 8th Avenue and 2nd Street at the dunes, and we have the APN number, due to deeper soil remediation requirements for the blight removal. All healthy trees to be replaced at a 2-to-1 ratio, and this is exempt from CEQA per Article 19, Section 15304, minor alterations to land. So if we can have a staff report.
Sounds good. So Nick will be giving the presentation.
So much, Guido and Chair Amadeo. So this is a permit that you guys have already seen. And so this is an amendment to the original tree removal permit for the blight removal. There was 2 city parks originally. This is just for the Dunes City Park. Or sorry, there was 2 sites before, Cypress Knolls and then this site. But this site, as you said in the description, they did more testing of the soil and found that they needed to go 3 inches deeper. You've already seen this slide before. This is part of the university specific plan area, but it is not being done by the Shea Homes and the Dunes. This is a city project. So as I said in my previous presentation to the Planning Commission, that this has been approved as part of the blight removal process for the city park by the City Council. On March 10th, Planning Commission approved the previous tree removal of 34 trees at this particular site. As we have learned that the Department of Toxic Substance Control, which is a state department, they had done more testing. They discovered that in order for this park to be safe for children and for people to use going forward and make it completely safe for that type of use, the only way to do that is to go down 9 inches. And so they had a few different options, but the only way to make it completely safe was to go down 9 inches. And so in discussing this with Elvie, the project manager for this project for the city, I said, if you're going to go down 9 inches, we really need to do there's any potential that more trees might be removed, we really need another arborist report to understand the impact of the trees. And so Patrick, who's on the call right now, he did the arborist report for the city of Marina, and he found that 3 trees will definitely be impacted to the point of 40% or more of their critical root zone to be removed, and therefore will be tree removals, and 2 are potential removals. And so this slide now brings us to the original tree removal permit, which I highlighted on that, the trees that will be changed. The yellow highlights are the ones that are removed, and then the green highlights are the ones that are potential remove, and that's the same coloring I did for the proposed amendment. On the right-hand side, you can see the yellow highlighting trees. They're very close to the buildings, within that 5-foot buffer where they're gonna have to do additional soil removal. And the green trees are slightly further away and have a higher potential rate for removal. So these are pictures of each of the 5 trees. Normally I don't get to show you every picture of the trees for removal, but because there's only 5, I thought, why not show you guys? So as you can see, they're very, very close to the buildings. There's 2 cypresses looks like those are cypresses for removal. And then there's an oak tree on the bottom, 1345. And then the 2 that are potential removes, they are deemed to be potential removed depending on how much soil they actually have to remove. Those ones might be able to be saved. The replacement plan is a standard 10 trees with a 2-to-1 ratio. And if we end up not needing to remove those 2 potential trees, then we would reduce it by 2 for each of those trees. As I've stated previously, this is due to the impact to the root zone, also known as trip line, which is what we say in our ordinance. And in discussions with Elvie, our project manager, she said that the contractor will do everything they can to minimize the potential impact to the trees, the 2 trees that are potential removals. So this project has the same conditions of approval without the cypress knoll specific conditions of approval. That area has a more unique site that has additional findings and conditions required for it. So I took those out, and then I added a condition of approval specifically for the potential trees to just sort of codify that the contractor will do whatever they can to minimize impacts to those 2 potential trees. So if they can be saved, they can be saved. And so staff is recommending approval of the resolution to recommend to the community development director to approve the removal of these 5 trees, including 2 potential, with the replacement ratio as I've described. And that ends my PowerPoint presentation. And I'm going to stop sharing unless you guys need me to share. And let's pull it back up.
Okay, so open this up to our commissioners. Does anybody have any questions of Nick? Looking, please raise your virtual hand if you have any questions.
Sure, Amadeo, I did want to elaborate also on Nick's presentation. The vice chair asked about kind of ministerial versus things the commission should know about. This is one of those instances where, as staff, we probably could have not brought this to the commission because it's only 5 additional trees. But in light of all the issues surrounding dunes and trees and in full transparency and disclosure, so this to the vice chair's point, this is a good example of bringing things forward so that we're all on the same page, that there's no question about what staff's doing and all that. And so that really is the genesis of always trying to brief the commission on any things that potentially might blow up or just be aware of. And so that's really the genesis of this. It's a relatively straightforward presentation, but we just wanted to brief the commission. So
Thank you, Director Guido. I'm never going to attempt your last name.
that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so Vice Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair Amadeo. I received a lot of comments and heard a lot of questions about the tree committee regarding this item as people talked about it on social media. And so my question is, do we have a date when the tree committee is supposed to be back in operation, or?
Not at this time, but I'm going to be giving a recommendation to the city council probably in the next, whenever the city manager and council wants us to go. But yeah, we're definitely going to have a discussion about how that gets reconstituted and in what format, and doing it in a way that is streamlined. And, we have a very small staff, so trying to, how it comes back also has to impact the staff as well. So yeah, to be determined.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? I'm not seeing anyone else. I had a question regarding the actual resolution, because I think where it talks about approval for 5 trees, maybe only 3, the language seemed a little bit, I don't know, screwy to me. I understood what was trying to be said, that you can remove up to 5 trees. But to me, the resolution wasn't clear that it's really a permit to definitely remove 3 trees with the possible addition of 2 more.
Right.
Instead of saying including 2 potential, I felt like it should be the removal of an additional 3 trees and possibly 2 more. Unless that doesn't work because it's not saying 5 trees. I was just disturbed by the language. I don't want confusion from the public of 5 trees being removed when they have heard that 3 trees are definitely going to come down and the other 2 are a maybe. And no, that's not going to come back to us. We're approving that the other 2 trees will be the remediation will determine whether or not those trees have to come out. So that was my concern.
Is the language as written more amenable, Chair Amadeo?
For me, yes. And
Right.
if any other commissioner, and I see Commissioner St. John has his hand raised. So let's see if he has anything he'd like to add. Go ahead, Commissioner St. John.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just trying to get my arms around what would trigger, or what metrics or what gates to go through would trigger the option for the 2 additional trees. Is that just up to the arborist on site? If he says, "Ooh, there's too much roots that we're chopping into, go ahead and take the trees down"? Is that the kind of trigger point? Because it's pretty well just kind of left open, I guess, to the discretion of the arborist.
Yeah, I can answer that question to some degree. And then if it's not clear still, we have LV Camacho from Wallace Group on the call, as well as the actual arborist, Patrick Carbachare, is also on the call. So either of them can chime in after I'm done. But the reason why there's the 2 potential trees is that when we did the original permit, we went with what the information we had at the time. So we went with the 6 inches, and that was how we came up with the 34 trees. When I was told that we need to go back to the planning commission, I thought, well, if there's any chance that we might remove more, give me the ones that definitely will be removed. And then if there's any potential that you might remove more, please include those. That way we don't have to come back and just staff and say, okay, they already reviewed these 2 trees, or, for removal if they need to. And so if there is a situation where they need to go deeper and cut into the roots more than 40%, that will constitute a tree removal, that they're allowed to do that as long as they, coordinate with staff. So, and let us know. So it's no different. We did a similar thing with the Sea Haven tree removal permit. And as they go forward, they're updating me with, bird reports, and because it's during nesting season, as well as letting me know which of those potential trees are actually ended up needing to remove. And so, when that happens, I get notified. Staff keeps a log of those, and the similar would happen with this. So if they do end up removing these 2 trees, they would notify us and say, we need to remove these 2 trees for X, Y, and Z, whether it's based on more testing, because they are going to need to retest the soil while they're removing it, once it's removed. And, it's a very involved process with multiple testing of the soil at multiple different spots. And so as they learn new information, they may need to remove these 2 trees, or the soil removal may also impact them, and that might remove them. So, LV, did you want to add anything to that?
I think you said it clearly. So it just that when Patrick went and re-evaluated those trees that's really close to the buildings, he found those 3 that's basically, he was clear that it will be taken out because the roots will be about 40% be taken out. Those 2 maybe we could save depending upon the testing of the soil that will remain.
So Nick, can you explain why the soil has to be tested, what they're specifically looking for, that it would be dangerous to people who would be eventually using that park?
I'll let LV respond to that, because she's more in the.
Sure, and I'll try my best. Good evening, everyone. Initially, when we came to you about March, I believe, when we came to you for getting the tree removal, we have our plans. We have our consultant who did, and we were designing it for a 400 milligram per kilogram of lead to remain. But then we found out that this parcel of land was included on the 2006 removal action work plan, which we have to abide for us to get the clearance from the Department of Toxic Control, DTSC. So for us to make it as a playground or a park. So, and the new threshold for them is 80 milligram per kilogram, or 80 parts per million is what they call it. So that when they go and test the soil that will remain, it should be below the 80. So initially we were looking at about 400, that should be below 400, so 6 inches would suffice. However, with the threshold being 80, the Shea homes have been doing their remediation, like going 9 inches, and this seems to clear the requirement from the DTSC. So that's what we end up doing. So
is this primarily lead paint that you're looking at, or is there asbestos as well as a substance of concern?
It just lead.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from our commissioners? And I'm not seeing any, so we will open this public hearing. I see Michael Owen, you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
Okay, great. Well, just because of the recent comments, maybe when you make the motion, you might want to add something in about getting some sort of after action report. Did they remove the 2 extra trees, just one of them or none of them? Just because it seems like there's some interest about that. I support the resolution, and what I really, and one question is like, how many trees are being saved? I know 34 are like, we're going to be removed initially, and then there's another 3, possible 2. And I'm sort of, I think there's, anyway, I would be really interested if you have the figure, because I think it's 20 or 30 that are going to be retained. The thing I really like about this report, I was able to get a lot more information from staff, but they tested each individual 47 barracks for contamination. And there are like about maybe 10 trees that were within the 5-foot radius, but they tested the soil and they found it. The excessive levels of lead did not exist where they needed to remove those trees. So it wasn't like they just had a blank check to remove all trees within 5 feet of the barracks. And I think that's really important for everyone to appreciate and be aware of. When Don Hoffer was doing the tour on 1 June, at one point he remarked about the 15 or 10 barracks that they're going to have to remove. And one of the reasons he couldn't remove trees is because they were all within 5 feet of the buildings. I was able to reference the report, your staff report information on this topic and tell him, no, that's not automatically. Like in the Dunes Park, they tested each individual building, and some trees, the excessive level didn't exist, and they saved those. So it wasn't just like a one size fits all, like any trees within 5 feet of the barracks automatically have to be removed. I really appreciate that sort of like more exact, detailed concern for the facts, because it really makes a difference on the trees. I mentioned before the general rule for clear cutting that the developer got away with for the Planning Commission in 2020, 2021 was simply proximity of proximity of trees to construction activities. I mean, and that was just such a general blank check for clear cutting. But like when they were forced to really look at things in detail, each specific trees, et cetera, they found, okay, the filtration drums, containers, like were in certain places, but other places they could keep the trees on First Avenue. So anyway, I just really appreciate maybe it's ministerial details, but I think it's really helpful for that information to come back to the public and to the planning commissioners. So I hope that continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. I don't see any other community members with their hands up. I think the only one. Oh, wait a minute. No, Tina Walsh has joined us. Tina, you have the floor. Can she be allowed to talk? Here we go. Okay, Tina, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is Tina Walsh. I just tuned in. I didn't hear the whole presentation, but I just tuned in while Mike Owen was speaking. And I'm so impressed that he's impressed. And I think he spoke very much the same way I'm thinking about this also. So I'm okay with the staff report, and I think you're doing a great job with the detail, and thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Okay. We don't have anyone else in attendance that wishes to speak, so we will return back to the commission, and we have Commissioner Woodson.
Thank you. Just one question, because I couldn't find it in the meeting packet. The guidance that is changing the requirement and reduction in parts per million, which rod is that in? Is that in the overall Superfund rod for the site, or is that in which of the subsection remedial decisions is driving this for the site?
So I believe, Elvie, that would probably be you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So on the 2006 raw, it's a different amount, and there've been 2 changes since then. And the most current one that where Shea Homes has to abide by too is the 80 parts per million. So that's from DTSC. It's basically, I think it's based from studies for primarily for residential and park.
Okay, I guess my take is I still would like to find the actual remedial action decision, the ROD that actually pertains to this, so I could actually look at it. So I mean, I'm just curious. Having been involved in remediation, there are hundreds of documents that were created for the Superfund for the site overall. And I'm just curious at which one is driving the relative risk criteria specifically that changed this.
So Glenn, if I can, can you see my screen?
Yep.
So on the in my research for this amendment, I actually went into the City of Marina's Public Works website under their city projects. They have a web page dedicated to these two blight removal projects. It includes their project specifications as well as addendums to that. If you read addendum 5 and 6,
okay,
it will speak to the changes and the reasons why they went deeper. Is that correct, right? Elvie, I believe it's 5 and 6. It's not
Correct.
4. I think it's just 5 and 6.
Yes.
And so
6 is the detailed one that prepared by West Environmental, who we hired to work with us.
And as of course, as they get more information, Brian McMinn and Elvie are very good about updating this page. You can also see there were some questions by the public about the trees to remain. We're going to have to amend the photo log for the city park for these 3 trees to be removed, and then add the 2 for potential just to modify that photo log. But any information for this project that the city is doing is going to be uploaded to this. And this is an active page, so it'll continue to be updated. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Of course.
So, Commissioner Woodson, do you have any other questions?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Michael Owen, would you please put your hand down? I almost recognized you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, so any motion? I'd be happy to entertain a motion at this time. I'm not seeing any hands.
Know what to do with it?
Okay, Richard St. John.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I guess this is in my page, I can read it, that's shared.
It should be on your screen, the recommendation.
Recommendation XX motion. Recommendation to open a public hearing, take any testimony from the public, and consider adopting a resolution recommending.
Okay, wait a sec. Can I stop you a moment?
Yeah.
Because it should no longer be a recommendation, because we've already had the public hearing. So
okay.
if we can take it from we want to adopt a resolution.
Okay. Okay, so the motion would read to adopt a resolution recommending that the Community Development Director approve the removal of an additional 3 trees with the option for 2 potential trees based on input from the project arborist and project manager at the proposed city park, APN 031-221-008 at the dunes due to deeper soil remediation requirements for the blight removal. All healthy trees to be replaced at a 2-to-1 ratio, exempt from the EQA per Article 19, Section 15304, minor alterations to land.
Thank you, Commissioner St. John. Do we have a second?
I second.
Maybe one clarification here. All healthy trees to be replaced at a 2-to-1 ratio. Uh, Okay, these are currently, I guess, these 5, 3 plus 2 are all healthy trees, deemed healthy trees at this time.
That's
Is that
correct.
right? Okay. All right, understand. So then the motion is correct as written.
Okay, so the motion was by Commissioner St. John and seconded by Commissioner Herr. If we can have a roll call vote, please.
Chair, can I have a brief comment on the motion before we vote?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just kind of want to say that I agree with the sentiment of the commission and the public, and that excellent staff work was put into this, and the collaboration with Shay has been really good to remediate, especially what's happened in the past. But I'm still really having a hard time reading the tea leaves about what's going on with the tree committee and kind of how we're handling the code that was so prudently created by those that came kind of before us. And so I haven't decided yet. I may abstain. If I choose to do that, I want to say that I'm doing that as a little bit more disapproval of the process and not necessarily the application and the hard work that's gone into this. So we'll see how the vote goes, but I wanted to share that for the record. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. So now if we can have a roll call vote, if there are no other comments from commissioners first, and then I don't see any, although Vice Chair, if you could put your hand down.
Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCarthy,
Abstain.
Commissioner Herr,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes,
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. So now we have no action items or other action items. There are no discussion items. Do we have any commissioners who wish to make comments on what they've been doing, what they expect to do? Now would be the appropriate time. And if staff has any informational reports, we'll do that right after Commissioner Woodson.
Not necessarily what I'm doing. I just had a question for, I guess, the planning group, or it could be anybody. I'm just curious, is the construction work that began in the last week over at Gloria Jean Tate associated with regular maintenance, or is that actually the beginning of the building out of the pump track and development?
That I'm not as familiar with. Maybe Elvie or Nick, if you guys have some input on that.
I have an input. Yes, we Monday we started the construction of the pump track. We also are doing putting in curb ramps on the intersection of Abdi and Cardoza as part of your annual street resurfacing.
Thank you. That's
If I can
exciting.
ask a question related to that. I knew the pump track was going in. My understanding is that the tot lot that's in the park was being replaced. I know the tot lot is gone. It was removed. Do you know if that tot lot is going to be replaced?
Not at this time, but it's in the design process.
Okay. All right. Anybody else who has a question or comment for staff or for the public? Vice Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair Amadeo. Just wanted to reiterate my earlier question about our housing element certification, and hopefully the question was clear to staff. If not, I'm happy to repeat it.
No, actually, so as you guys are all aware, we're a little bit behind even on the old housing element cycles. So since I started in December, I've been trying to get us on track with the downtown plan and also adopting some policies so we can meet our 4th and 5th cycle. So I'm kicking, that's going to be rolling out in the next 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how much progress I make. And then after, hopefully I can get some policies adopted, which I can't share at the moment. Then we're going to immediately pivot to getting our housing element consultant for the 6th cycle, which is this cycle that's due December 2023. So it's going to be a little weird. Usually I work on one housing element and then I'm done with it and then I implement it. In this case, I'm trying to help Marina by cleaning up some stuff from the past by cycle 4 and 5, and then immediately pivot to cycle 6. So it's kind of in the next couple months.
So, and forgive my ignorance, because maybe I don't even understand what I'm asking, but does that mean that for the 6th cycle, we'll likely only have that 1 year to rezone versus the 3 years? Do you know what I'm talking about, or is?
No, so what you're referring to is, so because I came from ABAG, so we're in the AMBAG, or let me back up for the new commissioners. So the state of California is broken up into different regions, and San Diego cities were the first ones to do the 6th cycle housing element. And then it went to LA. And then I just came from ABAG and all the Bay Area cities, and they had until December 2022 to get their housing element done. We're in the AMBAG region, and all the AMBAG cities in Santa Cruz and Monterey, and I believe there's one other county I always forget.
San Benito, I
San
think.
Benito, thank you. They have until December of 2023 to get their housing element done for the 6th cycle. And what Vice Chair is referring to is, if you don't meet that deadline, and there's actually a 4-month grace period in the law, you as a city are mandated to upzone all of your properties within 1 year. So we absolutely do not want to miss that deadline. If you meet the deadline, you have 3 years to rezone any properties you need to do. So that's what the Vice Chair is referring to. So
Thank you.
and for the newer commissioners, Commissioner Herr and Walton, and Commissioner St. John, I will definitely be doing training for you guys. I'm just trying to push a boulder up a hill by getting the 4th and 5th cycle housing element stuff done first. Once I get it to a certain level, then I'm going to reach out to all the commissioners, but especially the newer commissioners. Housing element, RENA, this is all Greek to people who've never worked on it, and I want to make sure all the commissioners, but especially the newer ones, have the terminology down so you can be part of the discussion. So
Thank you. Any commissioners have comments at this point? I'm not seeing any hands. Does staff have any, other than the housing elements 4, 5, and 6, do we have any other staff informational reports?
absolutely. So as I said earlier, Allison is going to be focusing more on the long range stuff. We are going to be releasing an RFP for the general plan. That and more news to come, but just a little teaser, like they say for the movie, teaser trailer. The American Planning Association for the state has graciously agreed to help us kick off the Cypress Knolls project.
Oh,
So
wow.
they're going to be providing some technical assistance and having workshops. So more information to come, but that is going to be a really important project for the city of Marina. And the planning commissioners will definitely be involved in those workshops and charrettes. And but yeah, we're really excited to have the APA help us restart that project.
So I have a question regarding that project for
Right.
you. I was involved back in 2005 when it was finally approved by the Planning Commission. And then I was on the council when it was approved by the city council. And then I was on the council when the developer went bankrupt and the project died. So I've seen the process. It's nice to hear that it's going forward again. But my question is, as planning commissioners, we have to base approvals on projects based on the current general plan. So is the general plan going to come before us first and then we'll see that? Are we going to amend the general plan just in order to be able to move forward with Cypress Knolls?
More than likely, yeah. So for Commissioner Herr and St. John and Walton, so you know, there's the zoning code, which implements the general plan, and then there's a specific plan, which is basically like a mini general plan. And if you adopt a specific plan, It has the full weight of the general plan and it has the full weight of the city behind it. You can write specific plans to be very specific with very detailed standards, or you can make it more general. But to answer your question, Chair, we'll probably be doing a specific plan with very detailed standards, and then trying to work with the development community to get it adopted, because we definitely need more affordable housing, and the general plan could take longer than the Cypress Knolls project. So
Right. And the general plan is already very late. So
right,
that's why I asked the question, because our general plan is outdated. So how do you move forward with the project that would be impacted by the general plan? And it sounds like with a very specific plan, we'd be able to do that.
right.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Sorry for my barking dog in my backyard. I'm sorry if you can hear it. So,
It's like trying to do this in your son's bedroom, right?
yes, yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so if we have no other comments, then, and no correspondence, I don't see any correspondence, then we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.